Good afternoon, everyone. We have a quorum now, so we can begin. I'd like to welcome you to the May 12th Oklahoma City Planning Commission meeting. And first order of business would be to ask you to either turn off or silence cell phones and pagers so that we don't hear those during the meeting. And if you are not the applicant, but if you have come to talk to us about a case, please fill out a sign-up sheet. They're on the table outside the chambers. Indicate which case you'd like to talk to us about, and we'd be happy to hear you. And with that, Russell, we'll go to approval of the minutes.
I'll move approval.
Second. Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Cast your votes. Okay. Well, the minutes are approved. And continuance requests.
We have two uncontested requests for continuance. Item 22 is PC 10277, and item 23, CE 805, both to request to continue to May the 26th.
Did anyone come down today to talk to us about either of those items? They're number 22 and 23 on our agenda.
Move the continuances as read.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to pass the continuances. Cast your votes, and those are approved.
There are 5 new requests for continuance. Item 1, SPUD 594, request to continue until June the 23rd. Item 2, PUD 1434. Item 3, C 5286. Item 4, C 6283. And item 19, CE 806, request to continue to May the 26th.
Again, the same question. Did anyone come down to talk to us today? Well, apparently somebody did. I'll ask the question generally first. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 19. I realize someone's come to talk about item 4. Which item did you come for? 4. Okay. We'll hear you in just a second. So in that case, we'll take a motion to continue items 1, 2, 3, and 19. So move. Second. Okay. Cast your votes, and those are continued. And Mr. Taylor. Apparently the applicant has asked to continue this item to our next meeting, the 26th of May. Are you able to come back at that time?
You bet.
Can I take that to signify that you don't object to the continuance and we'll just see you in 2 weeks?
I think I can probably have some more people here for it if you put it off till the 26th.
I'm sure the applicant will be thrilled to hear that.
I'm sure he will.
Oh, you signed up for 4 as well? But if you would, give us your name and go to the microphone. Are you willing to come back as well in 2 weeks?
I suppose so. I've got a question.
Come to the microphone if you would, and tell us your name and address.
Jeremy Williams, 1013 Southwest 112th Street. And
You say you have some questions?
I have questions about, and depending on what they're planning on doing, I don't know.
Well, we're not going to hear that today, as it turns out. So,
Okay.
I mean, the applicant's not here to answer questions if you have them.
Okay, so, my concern is just how small the plots they're putting in, what kind of houses they're going to put back in there behind me.
Well, that'll be disclosed, I guess, in 2 weeks. Let me take a look and see if I can tell you anything. Actually, I don't know where.
Since we're here on the same thing and the applicant didn't show up, could we just have a default against them?
Nice try. I can tell you that the lots are R1 single-family size, which means 6,000 feet or more.
Yeah.
I actually see the applicant's engineer here sitting in the background, hoping I don't spot him. Let me suggest that you go outside. David Todd, who's their engineer, is sitting in the back.
Okay.
If the three of you want to go outside and visit for a few minutes, and then we'll hear the case. Or maybe another question, David, why are we continuing this for 2 weeks?
David Todd, Todd Engineering, representing the applicant. There were several TEs on there that I wanted to clean up before we came up here, and also the staff report had asked that we confirm some distances of the houses where we're taking that street through, and I hadn't had time to actually go out and get that surveyed. I didn't want to just bring you a sketch and tell you, that we just measured it off. So we're going to go out and shoot those and provide that information. And some of the TEs that we cleaned up were really just not typographical errors, but just changes in common area designations and things like that.
Nick?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move we continue this for 2 weeks and encourage David and these folks to go out and exchange what information they can and see if they can get on the same page right now, or at least define their differences.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue item 4 for 2 weeks. Cast your votes. It's continued, and are there any additional continuance requests from the public today? Okay. Thank you.
We move on to item 5, which is C-6284. It's the final plat of South Lake Manor, Ward 5.
Good afternoon, Tim Johnson, with Johnson Associates on behalf of the applicant. This is the last piece of residentially zoned property in that project. The preliminary plat was approved quite a while back. Section 1's been in place, and all but about half a dozen lots have sold. And so the developer wants to go forward with this last section. We've met with the staff and discussed all the TEs, and we're in agreement with all the TEs.
Okay, commissioners, no one has signed up.
Move approval of the application.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 5. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Item 6 is PUD 1439, an application by Kenneth Halfin, Al's Auto Salvage, to rezone 2812 Southeast 29th Street from R1 and I2 to PUD 1439, Ward 7.
Randy Hill with Edie Hill, representing the applicant, who is here also.
Randy, I understand that the applicant has not provided traffic with an indication of sight distance for curb cuts. Has that been brought to your attention?
It was brought to my attention just before the meeting that you'd like for us to stake that off before it goes to council, and I'd be happy to do that.
So as long as traffic approves it before you go to council, you're okay. So
Yeah.
we'll just put a TE in that allows for administrative approval by traffic if you meet the sight distance.
For the new curb cut, yes.
Curb cuts, yes. Any other discussion?
I do have a question. One of the technical evaluations by staff questioned what an antique sign is.
Yeah.
What is that?
There are some antique gas station signs. There's a Phillips 66 and a Sinclair.
Okay.
And
May I see that, please? Oh.
I have a question as to why they were being excluded from the requirement of the base be landscaped.
Actually, as far as the base landscaping is concerned, I mean, we wouldn't have a problem with that if you want to have those included as a part of that.
Well, are you going to landscape the Sinclair sign that looks like it's almost leaning up against the building?
I mean,
around the
we'll
base?
landscape whatever can be landscaped there.
And then the Phillips sign,
And the existing sign, we're landscaping as well.
okay.
We're going to put a planter around it and bushes,
So we get landscaping on the main sign and then the Phillips and the Sinclair. Because the
as much
Sinclair
as
looks
we
like
can, yeah.
Yeah.
Randy, what's the tennis racket just to the right of the Sinclair sign?
That's actually a spot for a Texaco sign.
Are you going to take that down? Or are you going to put up an antique Texaco sign?
Yeah, I'm going to put up an antique Texaco sign.
Well, what I would like to see is, I won't object to the antique signs.
Right.
But to the extent that they cease to exist, saying Texaco, Sinclair, or Phillips 66, you can't put auto salvage, you can't put your name on those signs.
We'd be willing to stipulate that in the
I mean,
PUD.
that's part of the TE.
I think that's good.
They're only that and nothing else.
And nothing else. And they aren't really for sale either. They are something he's collecting.
All right, well, that'd be part
And you're
of
not
the TE.
anticipating coming up with a Permagee, a Conoco, and a DX to
No,
go?
that's all we've allowed for us for those three.
So we're talking about 3 antique signs, up to 3 antique signs.
Yes, sir.
If they are no longer antique signs, they're removed.
Okay.
And then poles and, I mean, they need to go away. The antique sign idea is a good one. I like that. But if they cease to be that, the poles and everything should go away.
Okay.
Okay, so that's added to, as a part of TE number 2. No one has signed up, Commissioners. Any other discussion or thoughts?
I make a motion that we approve the application with the modifications, including administrative approval after traffic has reviewed it before it goes to council, and that to be limited to the signs as stated in the presentation.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 6 as conditioned, amending TE2 and adding a TE3. Okay, we're ready to go. Cast your votes. And you're approved with those conditions. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you very much.
Item 7 is SPUD 610, an application by Crosstie Advertising to rezone 11712 North I-35 Service Road from C3 to SPUD 610 in Ward 7.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Dennis Fox. This is an example. Can we not put it up on the screen, Lance?
Not on there.
Huh?
We cannot.
Okay. Well, the picture that I guess Mike's going to hand around is a picture that shows what our proposal is. If you'll look up at the map that is in front of you, you'll notice an area that's zoned C4 and has a, now we have no map. Okay, is zone C4 and has a hotel. My client, Floyd Percival, and his company, he has a company called Crosstie Advertising. He has a number of businesses, but that is one. He sold the hotel, and there is an existing billboard on that site. When he sold the property, he was under the impression that he had an easement right to continue to have that billboard there in perpetuity. Now, what transpired when the bank took the hotel back was the bank came and said, well, we don't agree, and the documents provide that it ran as long as the owner of the hotel had the property, and therefore you have 2 options. You can remove your sign, or you can pay us approximately $300,000 and you can keep it there. So Floyd hired Mr. Borelli to go out and determine what the state would allow, and he's here, and I'm going to have Floyd talk to you also, but that sign will be removed from the C4 site. And our proposal is to move it between, it's approximately 250 feet. It's between 250 and 300 feet to the south, which is on the service station site that is shown as C3. Now, your staff report, when they talk about some of the opportunities and PUDs and things to do, talk about restrictions, etc. I could have zoned this under a PUD for C4
And then I would have had a number of uses, including mobile home sales and a variety of other uses that this commission and this staff would have said, the sky is falling and it's terrible. Instead of doing that, I left the existing zoning in place and added one use, that being the billboard that Floyd lost the opportunity to continue north of this location. Now, between Hefner and 122nd Street, just about every 1,000 feet you have billboards. And this would provide the 1,000-foot buffer is required by the state of Oklahoma. It would not meet the 1,200 feet, so that's one of the variances that we're asking for. Now, one of the advantages is the existing sign is about 60 feet in height, and we anticipate that the highest the new sign will be is 50. Could be as low as 45, depending on what we find when we get down into the subsurface. So I think you would be hard-pressed if you drive I-35 between Hefner and 122nd to say that what we're proposing is inconsistent with the uses out there. I want to make sure this commission is aware that we are not asking for an additional billboard. We're asking for the opportunity to move the billboard that we have and replace it south of the existing location. So with that, Floyd, if you would come and confirm what I just said, and then I'm going to have Mr. Borelli.
Before he comes up, just to be clear, so as I go north and back to the east a little bit, I see where it says C4 there, right?
Yes, sir.
And now, is that where your, quote, existing billboard is, or is it across the street over there where it says?
No,
it's confused a little bit.
Yeah, no, it is, that is the hotel I was talking about.
Okay.
And it is just to the south of that.
Okay. All right.
Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Floyd Percival. I owned the area for his C4. I sold the motel location. I bought sewer and water to these locations. I built a structure, an advertising structure, in the triangular shape of that C4, just south of the motel. We sold that to Motel 6, and they built a motel. I sold that portion of that property to Loic Ranch. And with the deal, I give them a reduced price on that land for a perpetual lifetime lease for this billboard, for access and also for utilities. And it was my document that he had signed. At closing, there was one sentence added to that document. And that sentence said, as long as Loic Ranch owned the property. I missed that one sentence at closing. We've all been to closings, remember, I would have never dreamed they changed the document that I prepared. They did, and Loic Ranch took bankruptcy. When they took bankruptcy, I approached the lending institution in Tulsa that had loaned the money for that property. They told me that they was not interested in extending any rights to me from the previous owner. I then approached them about a possible purchase of a perpetual lifetime lease. They told me they was not interested in any type of lease, that if I would like to, they would sell me 2.5 acres for approximately $325,000, which I own 60 acres around that location. I did not need additional property. So I contacted Cowden, Tom Cowden, which owns that Shamrock station there, and asked him if I could relocate my structure to his property for an amount. And he signed a perpetual lifetime lease with me, and I paid him 50% down. I had already checked with ODOT to find out if it was a legal location. ODOT sent a representative out there and said it was a legal location. As far as they were concerned, I could proceed. but I did have to get a permit for the city of Oklahoma City. I came to Oklahoma City with plans and drawings and so forth to get a permit for that location, and was rejected due to the 1,200-foot limit that was passed the year before. So I did not know what to do but approach to Mr. Box and see if him and Mr. Burley could give me some help to get this area approved. We are not building a new sign. All we're doing is relocating an existing sign at a lower level to save me from having to buy 2 acres from a lending institution for an outrageous price.
Okay, let me, Dennis, see if I understand. If you relocate the sign, you don't have a sight distance problem in either direction?
No, sir.
With Oklahoma City?
No, sir.
1,200-foot separations, is that correct?
We have, right at the present time, there'd be a 1,000-foot separation and in excess of 1,000. ODOT drove it, and...
That's not my question.
Okay.
Yeah. The answer to the question is, we have no problem with ODOT.
Yeah, I'm not interested in ODOT. I'm interested in Oklahoma City.
I'm just trying to answer your question.
Okay.
They have a standard that's less than Oklahoma City's. Oklahoma City, as you know, passed a modified ordinance, 3 or 4 years ago?
I remember it well.
Yeah, so we can meet the ODOT standards, but we do not meet the 1,200 feet. We meet, the 1,200 feet. We meet the 1,000-foot requirement. So that's why I filed the kind of zoning I did, leaving C3 in place and asking for the variance to the for 200 feet and asking that we be allowed to put the sign at this location. Does that answer it?
That answers my question, and I have 2 thoughts. One, we're really not in a position to address a legal contract between 2 other parties. That's not our function. And I'm not sure why we would vary the distance requirement between billboards, having gone to all the trouble to work on the sign ordinance several years ago, with the goal of ultimately having fewer of them spaced farther apart in the city.
Well, I've got a great answer.
I'm sure you do. What is it?
Well, number one, I think it is important for you to understand as you drive between Hefner and 122nd Street, almost all of the signs are at that 1,000-foot standard. And so this is a very unique and unusual area, and the fact that we're just going to move to the Diamond Shamrock station and minimize 200 feet, we're really not adding a billboard, won't have any visual impact, we think is appropriate.
Well, again, the goal of the sign ordinance, as we worked on it, was ultimately fewer billboards farther apart. And I'm certainly not in favor of our sitting here and varying the sign ordinance. Others may have a different opinion. Janice?
Well, I have to say I'm extremely sympathetic to your situation. What a mess. I don't feel like we're being asked to get involved in his legal dispute. I think the question is simply, whether it's appropriate for us to rezone a piece of property so that a billboard can be placed on it. And that's the piece of it I'm stubbing my toe on. Whether or not it would be appropriate to vary the 200-foot additional separation in this case of hardship or whatever, I can't quite get there. I don't think that it's a good idea for us to rezone property in order to allow billboards to go up. That's where I'm caught. And again, I just am extremely sympathetic to your situation. I wish there was something that I felt like we could do to help you, but I don't quite see it.
Well, from a policy standpoint, whether you want to approve it, of course, is your option. Could you help? Of course you could. That's why we did the form of zoning we did. That's why I kept the C3 regulations in place and didn't go to straight C4. But, there was some mention in the staff report about Board of Adjustment. Well, in Oklahoma, as you know, Janice, you can't do a variance to use regulations. You can vary separation issues, you can have setback issues and all those, but you can't add a use. And so we couldn't go to the Board of Adjustment on a C3 tract and accomplish our purpose at the Board of Adjustment, so this is our only forum.
Nick?
You've heard me comment numerous times that I'm not in favor of circumventing the Board of Adjustment on sign cases. And at first blush, that's what this appears to be. Getting deeper into it, this is really, in my mind, a zoning case. And I think Mr. Box makes good points. John, you mentioned the purpose of the zoning ordinance change was to, or the sign change was to limit billboards. It was. We're trading one out here. This does appear to be the right venue to me. Yeah.
I don't think that you'll get rid of the board. I mean, to your point, Nick, setting aside just as a practical aspect of whether we're getting rid of a billboard or not, I think this lending institution will someday come out from under the ether and recognize that there's value to the billboard. They'll get the price right, and somebody will be using that as a billboard. In this particular circumstance, just so it's a one-for-one thing, has your client cut the billboard down? I mean, the existing, what's the status of the existing versus the new?
Yeah.
Because I understand he had an option there, but I don't know what option has been, where we stand in that process.
It's a good question. The answer is the existing billboard sits today where Floyd got it permitted. And the bank has said it's time for you to pick it up and move it. And when we move it, then they won't have the option to put a billboard because it won't meet state regulations in regard to distance requirements, and that's why we say it's an even trade, which maybe gets to the intent of making sure we don't have more billboards. If I could just briefly, on the Board of Adjustment, and Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Oklahoma, you cannot get a use variance. So this property is zoned C3. C3 wouldn't allow a billboard. We couldn't go to the board. We have to come here. So that's why we're here. And if you would indulge me just a minute, I'd like to introduce Mike Borelli. He was the head of the right-of-way acquisition division with ODOT for over 30 years. He is now retired, and he has coordinated, worked with ODOT, and I'd like for him to speak.
Give us your name and address, Mr. Borelli, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Borelli, 12624 Valverde Drive, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73142. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I can't add anything substantive to these discussions today, except I was asked by the applicant and Mr. Box to reaffirm with ODOT, my former employer, as to whether or not this would meet their proper sign spacing and requirements and regulations. Pending a city approval, it certainly would.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, if I could, I mean, the same sympathy that Janice expressed about legal issues and all that, and a very effective argument by Mr. Box, that flies in the face of something that we worked on 2, 3, 4 years ago. We have a separation different than ODOT because we're trying to make our city better. And better means fewer billboards farther apart. If you don't comply, you don't comply. It's kind of that simple. And I appreciate everything that was said, sympathy about your legal issues, but it's very simple to me. This is an appearance corridor. It's less than 1,200 feet separation. We have worked on this. It's like pulling hen's teeth, working on our signs. And this is one time when you just don't comply. So I'm not in favor of it at all. I just don't, I don't see how it can be.
That cuts both ways. When you take the existing sign down and you move or relocate it down to this site, the distance between the new location and the next billboard to the north is much greater than 1,200 feet. So you're gaining there. You don't object to that.
That's the point.
You lost 200 feet to the south, but you're gaining, well, I don't know how much to the north.
But that's the whole point of, I think, what we worked on with the sign ordinance with billboards is lesser numbers farther apart.
Well, then why didn't we pass an ordinance that said, let's eliminate every other billboard?
We probably could never do that in a billion years. So.
You know the answer to that.
That's my point. Our point wasn't to arbitrarily force the elimination of billboards. This billboard is being eliminated because of some legal problems. I understand that. And we certainly don't have to let it come back. But if we don't let it come back, the question I would pose to you is, now the distance between the billboard to the south of the proposed location and the existing billboard to the north after this one's gone will be, I don't know how far, maybe the applicant knows, but if that is more than 2,400 feet, you could in fact then have these people to the north put in 2 new billboards and not stop it.
It's an interesting theoretical argument, but it's not the thing before us. I'm looking at strictly less than 1,200 feet. It's what we have, and so I'm going to make a motion to deny it.
Well, was that a motion to deny? I'll second the motion so we can vote.
Janice?
I'm struggling here. Let me be real clear about this. My objection to this is the idea of using a PUD or SPUD to put up a billboard or any other kind of sign. I'm not sure if what was in front of us was a zoning change to C4, where he could then go to the Board of Adjustment and get his billboard moved, that I would have any problem with that. I mean, I get all the arguments that are being made that it's really just a change of location and so forth. My concern is about setting a precedent, the use of SPUD or PUD for the purpose of signage. I don't like that, and I don't want to get it started. I don't want to encourage it. I don't want to set a precedent for it.
Well, I do respect what we like or don't like. If it's allowable under the zoning regulations, what I like or don't like may not, kind of falls by the wayside there. I mean, precedential or not, somebody's always the first case, and then there's more.
Well, but we've had this before. We had a rather heated discussion on this before, and when we deferred to our legal counsel, we were, I thought, informed that, yes, you can, in fact, do that. We don't have to agree to it because it's a PUD or an SPUD, but the legality is there, and this really appears to be, like I said, I'm a proponent of hearing these at the Board of Adjustment. Heard a lot of them when I was on the Board of Adjustment. But this appears like it, to me, really belongs here, Janice. It really does.
Nick, I agree with you in the sense of the discussion Board of Adjustment versus Planning Commission when we're talking about a zoning issue. My issue is, as Bob described, is the separation, which is something we can consider in whether we want to rezone the property. And I remember sitting through all of those sign meetings for years and negotiating with the industry and business owners. And what we came down to was a series of compromises, as you always do when you have those kinds of meetings. And we came out with an ordinance that the industry and we accepted.
But I guess what I would say in response to that, John, is that there are always going to be exceptions. And this is not an industry application. This is an individual who has clearly a unique situation. And that we really, if you look to what the intent was, as you said, to end up with fewer billboards with greater separation, you're not increasing the number of billboards here, and that's why it is a difficult choice for me.
I understand that. It's not altogether that easy for me either. I understand the difficulty that the applicant is in, and it was not something he anticipated. It was something that just got past him. And I'm sympathetic to that, as I would be to anyone who had a contract issue that didn't work out the way they wanted it to.
And I think to follow up on that point, let's assume we follow through and this planning commission recommends denial and the council doesn't approve it, and so we're forced to take down our sign. Well, I would anticipate that the bank would come and they would go get a Lamar or somebody else, and they'll put another billboard right where this is. So has the city gained anything? No.
Does it have separation 1,200 feet in each direction where it sits now?
Yes.
Okay.
So what we're doing is saying, this is a unique case. I mean, between Hefner and 122nd, there is a billboard literally every 1,000 feet. So it's not like we're going to deny this case and we're going to save, ourselves from seeing billboards. What we're going to do is allow a gentleman to put a billboard just south of an existing location, keep the bank from taking advantage of a situation, and when you're driving out there, you won't notice any difference. It'll look just like it does today. We'll just be a little bit to the south.
Susan, question for you. If we approve this, can it be conditioned upon that sign actually being moved? I mean, it seems to me if we rezone the land, we've rezoned the land.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, my question is, if for some reason he does not pick up that sign that we're talking about and move it to another location, but we approve the zoning, have we wound up with 2 billboards instead of one? We couldn't because of separation still, right?
It won't meet the requirements.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what his application is for, but yeah, you could condition it on him moving it.
We're fine with that.
Wanting to do.
We've been ordered to do it, and we're,
okay. I just wanted to make sure that if it was approved, that that's exactly what would happen.
That was one thing I wasn't clear on myself, is that was it going to actually move the billboard to the location once? I thought it was going to be theoretically moving, but now if it's physically being moved,
right,
then the issue is, do we want to move this billboard within and vary 200 feet of our regulations? Right. The other issue comes in that we work very hard because we're trying to establish some appearance corridors in this area, and certainly where it is located now, it's far enough away, even though it's still within the corridor, but it's off to the kind of to the north of it. But if he's actually, going to move it, we could condition that he move it, and if it didn't move, then it goes away.
That is fine, because we've been ordered to move it. We're going to take the existing billboard, and it's going to end up at that location that you see on the map called subject.
And it's going to be shorter.
Pardon?
And it's going to be shorter.
Shorter, yes, sir.
Just, Dennis, let me ask you one other question. The location appears to be, still seem to be some room that you could go north with it. Is that particular location where it's shown on our diagram, seem like it's closer to the little 3 buildings? Could it go all the way up to the property line?
It is, Floyd. The question was the location, and let me get you a map while he's answering it. And how did you end up with the location for this billboard?
I met with OG&E officials at the location because the power line's close to it, and we agreed for the best location to be for the power company. We also checked on where the sewer lines were and all of the underground utilities. And at that point, we chose a location that suited with all of the utilities, the existing utilities, The landowner also agreed to the location, and at that point, I went to ODOT, we put a stake in the ground with a sign that says cross-tie advertising on it. That sign is there today, and it has my cell phone number on it, and ODOT sent their personnel out there, checked the distance between signs, and approved the location. I met with the director, and she said this would be a good location, and she understood the process, and she said, as far as we're concerned, we will issue you a permit to relocate it. And with relocation of this one, Lamar or any other company can't come in and add the location where I had or various distance up to 200 or 300 foot this way. All they'd have to do is rezone the agricultural land for commercial. They could add maybe even 2 billboards to that location legally for Oklahoma City as well as ODOT. This way, we're guaranteed only one sign will be there, and it will be the one I relocate. It will not be a new one.
How far is the new site from the nearest other site?
Nearest one north?
Or
My attorney
south?
just asked me that, and we're probably at least 1,500 feet, maybe more.
How about from the south?
South, we're over 2,000 feet from the south.
Where are we breaking the 1,200-foot rule? Which direction?
We're moving the board south about 200 feet, and on which will give us a little over 1,000 feet separation from the billboard to the south. The separation from the billboard to the north, I do not know offhand, but it will at least be maybe 2,000 feet or better.
So you're a little over 1,000 feet from the billboard to the south?
Yes, sir.
Do we know exactly?
The relocation would be over 1,000 feet, yes, sir.
I mean, 1,001 feet or 1,100 feet?
ODOT, they measure actually from the center of I-35 and I-44.
Okay.
I don't question how they measure.
Okay.
And I think it is, I really don't know, sir.
Okay.
In talking to Mr. Borelli, he says it's 1,000 feet.
Okay.
Okay.
How about, Dennis, do you know the distance from the north, which is what Buck is asking as well?
Yeah.
Be interesting to know if it's 2,400 feet.
Well, that's my point. You're getting to where I'm wondering, and it's further to Nick's, is I'm not abundantly clear. I mean, the question about 1 for 1 is one issue, but I don't want to go 1 for 2. And I think that's my issue about the north.
Yeah, that's my
that you're getting to, John. I think that's what Buck was
yours and mine both.
Yeah.
I could maybe be persuaded if I was confident
Yes.
that
We're just getting that.
Let's get an answer to that question.
I think we should before we, because
If I remove this billboard, there'll be a billboard 1,000 foot to the south. And there'll be another billboard from that one would be in excess of 2,500 foot, I would just about guarantee.
which means
So it would actually put 2 boards in there.
I need a little better visual personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not throwing this stuff under the bus right now,
I mean,
Dennis.
I don't really know the great distance exactly.
Yeah, well, we're interested in exactly what the distances are.
And that's the difficulty I'm having. If the existing sign is sitting there where it is now, and there's another sign 1,000 feet north of that, as Dennis said, there's probably a billboard every 1,000 feet. Well, if that's the case, I think we're okay.
Yeah, but I don't know that.
Now, if there's not, if we'll say, if that's 2,000 feet, then I think there's an opportunity, well, if there's 2,000 feet there now, there's still an opportunity to put another billboard in the middle of it.
Exactly.
How about if Mr. Borelli's going to check, how about if we put this case on to the end of the docket, we'll either have an answer, or if we don't, we'll put it off for 2 weeks?
That's well, yeah. Why don't you can either do it that way, but I'd really like, and due respect to your visuals, Dennis, I would really like to have a visual. I'd suggest that you just continue it for 2 weeks personally, because I would really like a visual picture of where all the boards are in this stretch, so that I could really, because I'm having a hard time getting that clear, that clearly indicate all of them.
Yeah. We'll agree with that, and what you're going to find is between Hefner and 122nd Street, you know, we're going to show you a number of billboards. So,
I understand.
But the key is you want to see the billboards, where they're located, and then you want to make sure
We're really
you're
interested
comfortable
in
in the distance to the north.
We're really interested in the distance from the one immediately south and immediately north, so that you know what that's what we want to know.
But I want to include all of this, know exactly how far they could put one on this C4 piece of property.
Right.
Yeah, that's
The ultimate
whether they could end up
tipping
with another
point.
one north.
And, you know, I
fair
think
question.
that, because just the visuals are a little, we got 1,000 here, 1,200 there,
Okay.
you know.
Let's just continue it 2 weeks, and
That would be very
I'll
helpful for me.
I'll have the exact distances.
Motion.
Okay.
We have to
I
withdraw
withdraw
the
my
motion. Okay, second on the motion to withdraw the motion.
Okay, we'll cast your votes to withdraw the motion. That passes. We're voting to withdraw Bob's motion, which had a second.
Yeah.
And I didn't vote. Okay.
Right.
Now I voted.
2-week continuance.
Continue for 2 weeks.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to continue item 7 for 2 weeks, and presumably, Dennis, in 2 weeks, it'll be a much briefer discussion, because we'll have the facts. Okay.
And I will attempt to get that to the staff, so you all have that in your packet.
Yes, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Moving on to item 8. Item 8 is SP 433, an application by Sandeep Sachdeva for a special permit to operate a transportation facility, surface passenger use in the I-2 and I-3 industrial districts at 1901 East Reno Avenue, Ward 7.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Roland Tague. My address is 100 North Broadway, Oklahoma City, and I'm appearing for the applicant. This matter came on 2 weeks ago. It was continued 2 weeks. Commissioner Williams had questions about exactly what was going to occur there in terms of signs, landscaping, and so forth. Sarah Strawn, who represents the ownership of the property on the north and on the west, appeared, and Commissioner Gales wanted us to work with her. In the interim, my clients have developed a landscape plan that shows that it satisfied that technical evaluation on where the landscaping would be and what size the trees would be. There was also a question about the access to the building and whether we had separated the people from the buses, and that is demonstrated on these landscape plans. I sent them directly to what my client did to Commissioner Williams. I sent them to Sarah Strawn. She is here today. I won't speak for her, but she seemed to be satisfied with what we had done. The staff seems satisfied that they have withdrawn that technical evaluation, so we're down just to a sign issue, and it's not an issue, a sign evaluation, which we will comply with.
Okay, James, any comment before we hear from Ms. Strawn? She is here.
I did receive the documents and visited with the clients, and the conceptual plan for the landscaping is seemed like it's in excess of what we would like, and if they follow through with the conceptual landscape, I think it'll be okay.
And we will.
I appreciate you working with us on that.
Thank you.
Ms. Strawn, if you're here. You would give us your name and address for the record, please?
Sarah Strawn, 3100 Kingwood Drive, Edmond, Oklahoma. It's not that we have objections, we just wanted to make sure that we were being represented. We like the landscape plan. I mean, it would be our druthers that there not be a bus station at all, but I don't gather that's something I can object to. I'm not a legal counsel.
I don't think we can object
I'm
to
just
it.
John Q. Public, and my family owns the property around it. My one concern, and I talked to Roland about this, was how many buses were going to go through there, because of an article that was in the paper and I read, and that was in the Daily Oklahoman, and it was citing, at one time there was 80 buses, and that may have been way back when buses were bigger, and just the fact that there references that it drew vagrants and that which we already are dealing with in the area, and could impact the other in a negative way, but I just wanted to kind of reference more to this article in the Daily Oklahoman and I talked to Mr. Williams about it, that I had read about it in the paper.
Roland, do we know what the bus volume is?
Well, we talked, yeah.
Excuse me, there are 2 lines through there. The Greyhound people have 18 buses a day that come and leave. The Jefferson lines have 2 buses a day that come and go. In the summer, because of the traffic, that volume increases somewhat, and I'm told on holidays they put on extra buses, but the 18 in total per day is accurate. I think I told you all 26, but I think what I was reading was arrival and departure as 2.
2, okay.
So.
But it appears that it'll never get to that. In the paper, it talked about 80 buses a day.
Well, I'm sure my clients would love to have 8 buses a day, but it doesn't seem likely. It seems like that's more of a decline than an increase.
Ms. Strong, anything else?
No, I just wanted to have my foot in the door in case there's someday there is 80, and I'm not going to be happy about that. But,
If it gets 80 by Greyhound stock, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have to say, when I had kind of a lengthy conversation with Mr. Tay about this application, my questions about this application really had not so much to do with the specific movement of the bus to this, but the fact that, in a time when we're looking at our transportation plan and, talking about multimodal transportation and integrating, our city buses with our other means of transportation, that apparently all of this is just totally in private hands, and we have nothing to say about where the bus station is located. And it just kind of took me by surprise. I guess if there comes a time when the city of Oklahoma City has a strong interest in having the bus station be in a particular place, it can go about the necessary effort of attracting it to that location, wherever it may be. But I think, having actually ridden a bus fairly recently, it makes sense to me that they would want to be much closer to the interstate, and it's a miracle that they can get through all the construction that's going on downtown as it is. And I guess the other side of that is, apparently we won't have anything to say about what happens to the existing bus station if it's in private hands, and so...
There are a lot of people interested in what's going to happen to the existing bus station. It's a really iconic building that there was an article in the paper about that a couple of days ago about the use of it. But on this application, I think that primarily, I mean, even though the lady that commented about what's going to happen there, this is surrounded by I-3, and there's some major gravel crunching. I'm not sure what there is all around that, and so, it's kind of a problem anyway. But if your client can do it, this is relatively close to the American Indian facility that's going to go on there. That really could attract hundreds of thousands of people a year, and so they take buses in. Well, I think it's a great little location. So, I'm in favor of it.
Along with what we're trying to accomplish is, for at some point, Big Town's going to expand in that area and going to get more pedestrians in there. And this is the first step of really getting some landscaping around an existence, so it has a plus to it. So with that, I'd move, if no other comments, I move that we approve the application.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 8. Cast your votes. And it is approved.
Item 9 is SP 435, an application by Kiko's Autos for a special permit to operate an auto dealership in C3 Community Commercial at 801 Southeast 44th Street, Ward 7.
Is the applicant here? Okay, we'll pass item 9 to the heel of the docket and go on.
Item 10 is SPUD 608, an application by Christopher and Dawn Tucker to rezone 13013 North Morgan Road from AA Agricultural to SPUD 608, Ward 8.
Good afternoon. I have some brief statements about...
Give us your name and address, please, for the record.
All righty. It's Chris Tucker. I'm here representing me and my wife. My wife, Dawn, couldn't make it today.
And your address is?
We're at 13013 North Morgan Road.
Thank you.
We're requesting the zoning so we can obtain our licensing from the state to produce and sell wine from our vineyard that is located on our agricultural property. Our property is located on a main thoroughfare for this area. We are not part of a residential neighborhood. The closest residential neighborhood is located over half a mile to the north. Our proposed spud will in no way affect any of the other property owners that surround this property. The closest property that has a residence on it is located over 5 acres away from the proposed spud. All of their surrounding properties that are zoned agriculture, out of the properties that have residents located on them, they are more than 10 acres away. This business is a minor operation and will blend in with the other home-based businesses that are already in this area. Several of the agricultural properties that surround us are used for livestock and for horses. To the south of the proposed spud is a large home-based business that operates Monday through Friday. The other property owners to the north and to the south of the proposed spud have similar constructed outbuildings and barns. The building we chose to construct will blend with the other workshops, barns, and business-related buildings located on the surrounding properties. We have modeled our proposal for this spud after an existing winery and vineyard located on MacArthur between 122nd and Hefner Road. This existing winery and vineyard is immediately surrounded by residential homes. That particular operation has not increased the traffic or disrupted anyone's lives. So, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? We do have a number of people signed up. Okay. Judy Gordon, we'll hear from you first then. Now, there are a number of people who are here, and they're indicating that you're representing a group of them.
I have letters from a couple of the homeowners that I'm representing. I passed out a letter that came in late from the Marlows, who are located at 12510 and 12900, that have given me permission in their letter to speak for them. And the Ahmeds at 12701 have also given me permission in a letter that you have in your packets to speak for them. Their daughter has been in the hospital, and then we've had some other things in the neighborhood, so I volunteered to come here for them.
That's fine. Now, I need your name and address for the record.
Judy Gordon. My address is 12901 North Morgan Road.
Okay.
And I have basically 3 different categories that I have concerns about. The first category is just a general disagreement with rezoning the property in general. The second thing I have is some problems with design plan. And the third I have are activities and enforcement should the business be approved in our area. I would like to disagree with something that was just said by the applicant at 13010, the Tuckers. I disagree that it's not a neighborhood out there. We actually waited for our planned unit development to be approved in 2004, purchased our land in 2005, and it's all in a PUD. And we couldn't even build our home until after we waited for our zoning to be approved at that time. After it was approved, we got a permit, and we've invested $350,000 in just our property that's next door to the Tuckers. There are properties that I have pictures of in the packets that are all the way from almost 122nd and Morgan that run all the way to 134th. This is what I call our residential development because it's all approved within the PUD. The retail and manufacturing uses, I disagree with being compatible with residential use and having triple zoning on one particular property. Even though the retail is limited and the manufacturing is limited, to me, it's still retail and manufacturing, and you have to say if you give somebody zoning, then they could take it. But it makes it commercial, residential, and industrial, all at that one location. The city utilities in this area are deficient for business. There are no sewer lines. It has residential water lines, but they're limited at hydrant taps. We have a well at our property, which is the first property south, and we all have aerobic septic systems on that side of the road. So adding a business to this and having commercial waste and dumpsters and more septic needs and things like that, I feel like is inappropriate. The party requesting the rezoning built their home under the current zoning conditions, and also the whole stretch of that PUD has covenants that are filed at the county. I know covenants are probably not within your jurisdiction, but I consider this to be an addition and a development, even though the lots are 5 acres. But I consider it to all be a development because all the homes are built out. They were the last people to build a new home there just a few years back. And the homes out there range from $250,000 to $550,000 within this immediate area. We feel it would compromise the quality of our life and our property values living next door to a retail establishment and having the activities with trucking and deliveries and customers, buses. The main activity of wineries are tours and buses and wine tasting and that kind of thing. The problems I have with the design plan are the setbacks. In our neighborhood, the homes sit back at least 150 feet, and on the side yards, I don't think there's anything closer than 50 feet, but 50 to 100 on the side yards for the fences. So if someone were to start putting gravel parking lots and things like that in that are 25 feet from the road, we measure that at our house, it would probably look like a lemonade stand out there by the road. Two approaches to the property create a look that it's not one size anymore, that it's somehow been lot split up and there's a commercial and then there's a house and a commercial and a house. It would look like, to us, unincorporated areas that are under no city jurisdiction, such as Sooner Road between Moore and Norman, the businesses out there, or I-35 at the river south of Norman, which has gravel parking, no drainage, no screening. And when you pass by this area, you just kind of hold your breath because it's everything from fireworks to recycling to, you name it. That's what it would look like, in our opinion, with gravel parking lots and that kind of thing so close to the street. Commercial infrastructure considerations, while necessary for heavier uses and retail activities, are inappropriate here. That's why areas that have these uses have significant investment. It's not an option because the city usually requires these items to obtain a permit. The activities there, we feel like it would create a liquor store environment because wines can be brought in and sold if you approve wines and related items. Also, it would increase traffic, customers to our area, but there are whole catalogs of things that could be sold at this location, thousands of items, wine-related. Like I said, truck traffic, deliveries, commercial dumpsters, those kind of things we don't feel like are suitable for our neighborhood. And with gravel parking spaces and turn radiuses considered for buses, and also you can see the elementary school from this location. I don't know about footages or ABLE Commission requirements or anything like that for liquor at the current residence. But in the custom, then my next and last category is custom manufacturing. It would be very difficult to monitor if only their product that's grown there is being produced there. It was a little tricky for me to try to understand custom manufacturing. The examples given were jewelry making, candle making, and things like that. We're talking about a food product here, so I'm not sure how that would compare. But we couldn't possibly monitor it. So if they bring in more product and everything, they could make an unlimited amount of wine or bring products that other people make and sell in the liquor-type store environment. The zoning enforcement out there is very, very sparse. The businesses that they mentioned, we have a couple of illegal businesses and then some people who have had zoning that don't comply with screening and that kind of thing in our immediate area, which we haven't given up on. We're still trying to get compliance for those types of things, but we don't feel like just because somebody might have an illegal business that they're operating, I think that's actually why we're here, is because once people see things like that going on in your neighborhood and they try to keep it quiet for a while, but it gets bigger and bigger and out of control, then, everybody thinks, well, if they allow that, then it's okay for us to do it. We feel like there would be a pattern established and it could get out of hand and be very hard to control. I would like to thank you for considering my lengthy concerns on the matter. I've researched different things for weeks because we've just been sick about all the nice area. We mow our entire 5 acres. Everyone just about out there does. It's a beautiful area if you haven't seen it. So we just like to express our concerns on that. Would you like me to speak for the other 2 people, or?
Well, I assume their concerns are similar or the same?
Their concerns are similar. I just have a little clip from each one.
Well, if it repeats something you've already said, I think we're covered. If it's something new, we'd be happy to hear that. And I would say that to them if they were here, by the way.
I don't know if this is repetitive or not, so I just hate not to say it since she asked me to for her. She has a letter, and I'm not repeating her letter, but just one thing she wanted.
We've read the letters.
Okay. All right. I won't go over hers then. I have a late letter, and
That's this one?
yes.
Okay, we've got that as well.
Okay, and you guys have read that then? Okay.
Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have several. I'm not getting it here for some reason. I received all these protest letters. I drove out. I looked at the individual property. I looked at your property. And I'm confused with one of the things you said. You said you lived in a property immediately to the south of the Tuckers. Is that correct?
There's a driveway
Yeah,
between
what's that
us.
big, long driveway back to what looks like a big house way set back?
There is a house there.
That's not your property.
It is not.
So you're
I'm the
buffered
first
by
house
that
out.
lane?
Yes.
And then you have a very large garage or outbuilding on your property?
Yes, sir.
That's your garage?
Yes, sir. It's a storage building, yes.
Okay.
Accessory building.
And it's,
40 by 60.
which is larger than what he's proposing here. And his operation's all inside, so I'm having difficulty understanding the concern there, as well as when I look at the design statement, you were talking about the gravel parking lot within 25 feet of the road. The design statement that he's supposed to build to here shows it all the way back to the circle in front of his house, which is much more than 25 feet.
Well, I don't think it's the fact that the design statement looks like that. It's just what someone could do and why they would be asking for the close setbacks.
Well, now, this is an SPUD. It must be built in accordance with this design statement. We will hold him to that.
I don't know how far back that is. I just got a copy of that about a week or so ago.
I guess what's troubling me is we've been down this road once before with a winery on North MacArthur. This SPUD is a carbon copy. Matter of fact, I asked staff. Staff pulled the other one to use as a model for this one. There is no truck traffic. There is very little other traffic.
And if there were?
Well, is there truck traffic at your place?
No, sir.
You never have anything delivered? Ever? Is there truck?
Of course we do.
Well, of course you do.
But it's the
And, you know,
retail.
going down to the next people, when I went out there and looked, the next house down, their garage has a big pole barn hanging on the side of it. I'm assuming they have trucks to bring in animals.
They have 2 horses boarded.
This is an AA area. The property to the north of this literally has cattle in what would be the front yard.
That's the illegal feedlot. Yes, sir.
Well, okay.
That's the illegal feed yard. You can keep going on up, and I can talk about the other illegal things.
You know, if it's illegal, it needs to be stopped. But it
Well,
appears to be an AA use. It didn't appear to be a feedlot to me. What I'm saying here is, I think there's misinformation in these letters. They're talking about rezoning to RA2. This is not a rezoning to RA2. Your letters talk about commercial dumpsters.
Well,
this thing doesn't provide for commercial dumpsters. Where is this misinformation coming from?
Well, the RA2 was wrong on all the maps and everything, so when some people wrote their letters, they wrote it with the R2 because they thought Mr. Carey had rezoned our properties to R2. That was straightened out, and then the case was totally refiled again because it was misleading because RA2 is a different size than our regular zoning. So we talked to the municipal councilor about it. Planning wasn't willing to refile it because we didn't want there to be any misunderstandings about RA2 when people were trying to consider this. So I do appreciate that refiling just because our neighbors were confused. A lot of us met together and talked about it, and a lot of us, you know, were confused about how we got rezoned to RA2 without our knowledge.
Well, I
But
don't
they
believe you did. When I look at the zoning map for this entire area, there is some RA2 up to the north of you, but where you guys are, I don't. I see all AA.
Well, when the case came out, it was wrong on all the maps, but they did correct it. It was a GIS mistake, and so they did correct it and everything. But some people, you know, haven't thought about it since then, since their letters were put out, or didn't correct their letters. I did correct my letter after I wrote it, but that's only because I called and got it from planning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gordon, have you talked to the applicant? You said you had met with your neighbors. Have you all met together with the applicant too?
No, because generally, I just felt that I didn't know how I could negotiate on retail, you know, next door, and if it was just like some little thing with the development or something, it would be, but actually we're just opposed to both uses, have been looking for another place to move or something. We don't want another business. We've already got one illegal business operating just to the south of us. We don't want to live in the middle of retail businesses. When we moved out here, we thought the covenants and the zoning were going to be good, or we wouldn't have invested $350,000. We weren't finished investing, but you know, we were going to hook up to city water and do some other things and get sprinkling and pave our driveway. But we have to stop on those things because I can't get my money back. I mean, I've had a realtor come out and look and everything, and I'm okay where I'm at now, maybe, if nothing else happens around me. But those cows, I think, cost the guy up the road probably a $50,000 deficit on his property that just recently sold. Because I have an appraisal on mine, and it sold for $50,000 less with 5 more acres. So those are the concerns that we have, is just, moving into a really nice area and then having neighbors crop up with businesses that are retail. Basically, we have a problem with the retail, in our area, and we do have another problem out there, and it doesn't get resolved. People have complained for years, and it's actually expanded, and they've probably spent another $250,000 on this particular building and the expansion of the building, And I don't want to go into it farther than that.
Yeah, we can't do anything about that.
I know.
My point was that I think maybe some of your concerns, I would even say fears, about the operation of this particular use may be inflated, or that you maybe don't have all the information you need to make a decision. And I would strongly encourage you to get with the applicant, ask the questions you have, and get what answers he can give you.
I don't think I have any questions. It's just the fact that he could sell his property.
But you're saying if he could do this, he could do that. He has a proposal before us that specifies the use that he's going to make of the property.
Right.
So I think your concerns about what could happen may very well be answered by his proposal and by the use that he actually intends to make, rather than your concerns about what could possibly happen in the future.
Well, I'm trying not to make any more out of it than it is, but retail sales and the manufacturing there are what they are. And just because he says he says in his letters to me, we're only going to do this by appointment. We're not going to have anybody come over. But he can. I mean, these are just verbal things that people say. If you grant the zoning, people can do the setbacks however they want. I mean, I know you said if he has a design plan, I wish he had permits, because that would say, hey, these things are sitting here and all of that, but I can't do anything about permits. Once he gets this, he basically has the authority to do anything under these areas that he wants to do within the guidelines that he has on his design plan.
Ms. Gordon, let me maybe help out and add to what Janice is trying to say to you. We can condition this spud in a whole lot of ways. He's asking for custom manufacturing, but it's further limited only to the growing of wine, or cultivation of grapes, and the production of wine. He can't do any other custom manufacturing category.
But where would the grapes come from? They're not mature. Where are the grapes coming from?
He's going to plant grapevines, if he hasn't already, and he's going to have to wait for them to mature, and it's 5 or 6 years before he's got a crop that he can use. He's going to build a building to a specific design that he's presented to us that will be planted on the site where he shows it. But these are the kinds of things that if you would talk to Mr. Tucker, you would probably find out. And if he's willing to tell you that he will see people by appointment only, we can incorporate that in the spud, and that'll be one of his commitments to us as well as to you.
Gordon, have you had any communication, either written, verbal, or any other communication with
I was truthfully so upset about this because of the other business that we have in our area that got out of control.
Well, you're painting Mr. Tucker with that brush.
No, I do understand.
And you may find that that's not fair at all.
I'm not judging Mr. Tucker. I mean, I take him as a man of his word, but I don't want to go over and get real upset with my neighbor or something like that. So I thought it better I just, keep myself at my house.
Have you had any communication with him?
Just his letters to me on what they wanted to do over there.
So he outlined in a letter to you, did he outline in a letter to just you or to your neighbors? Or?
I don't know. I received a letter.
You've obviously been in communication with your neighbors.
Yes.
You guys have obviously...
We're all concerned about it. We're all concerned about it.
I just have to say...
Go ahead.
But no one went down to talk to Mr. Tucker and ask him?
No, they did. I believe some people did.
Well, be that as it may, I know Commissioner Gale's office is and my residence is equidistant probably to the winery on MacArthur. You never know it's there. I mean, it's been there for what, 10, 15 years now, Nick? Has it been that long?
Not that long. And part of the reason for this, guys, and to maybe make you feel a little better, ma'am, part of the reason that he's even here is because we have some rather archaic rules at the Able Commission. That's what led to the situation on MacArthur, and I know that's what's leading to this situation. They have some archaic requirements that require this type of zoning. What we do to mitigate that is limit it. You're concerned about as the chairman pointed out, the manufacturing. Well, it's limited to growing grapes and turning them into wine. The retail is limited to theoretically selling that and related items.
I assume that's a wine glass and a corkscrew.
In my catalogs, there's a lot.
Well, it may be, but I guess the point I make is that the one on MacArthur is hard, I mean literally hard up against residential. It's next door to the fire station. The residential's with the backyard of the guy next is 50 yards. It's across the creek. There's residential back to the south from that. There's one of the major arterial streets in Oklahoma City there. And I've driven by that since its opening, whenever that was, regularly, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week, all hours, days and nights. Traffic has never been an issue, at least in that particular circumstance. Delivery vehicles have never been an issue in that particular circumstance. Dumpster, I've never noticed, and when I say you don't know it's there, unless they have the sign out that says the winery's open, you don't know it's there. You see what looks like grapevines. This is really an unobtrusive, for that to exist in a hard residential area in the middle of Oklahoma City is, for one thing, amazing, but it's a use, or as that business is conducted, I should say, that is completely compatible with residential, but in my view, even more compatible with the area in which you reside right now.
Well, Mike, I think that's the point. This is AA. And when I look at the surrounding area, you talk about limiting deliveries. Well, she mentioned people to the south have horses. Somehow, either they have to haul it, or somebody hauls them in some hay, or they grow their own. That's the character of the neighborhood, if you will. And I just cannot imagine how this is going to interfere with it.
Does the one on MacArthur have a store? And do they sell wine-related items?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
So they have a store.
Well, it's not.
The store is
you can't really call it a store. It is a building.
A little reception area.
Where they manufacture their wine. And in a corner of that building, they have some shelves, and they have, as the chairman pointed out, basically sell some wine glasses and corkscrews.
And let me just kind of help wrap this up. I can tell you, because I have a sense of everyone on the horseshoe, if we were to vote today, we would approve this. The impression I have is Mr. Tucker and his wife, this is going to be sort of a hobby business. They've got an acre of grapes, and they're going to have a small facility in which you could go by appointment and have a wine tasting, and where they can actually press the grapes, put it in barrels, and age it, and then at some point it's ready to drink. I've got friends in Napa Valley. You cannot make a living on an acre of grapes. I mean, I'm just going to tell you right now.
Well, I was going to point that out.
Now, if he wants to become a full-time vintner, he's going to have to go and find land other than this, and a lot more than 5 acres in order to make a living from it.
What I'm
going to suggest, if you won't interrupt me, is that you sit down and talk to Mr. Tucker, and that we take this application up in 2 weeks. I think you'll be made comfortable.
Mr. Chairman, I disagree.
You want to go ahead?
And the reason I disagree is because of what the protester has told us repeatedly in her presentation. The objection is the uses, manufacturing, retail. We can't do anything about it. We've limited them to the point we've limited them. We can't limit them any farther.
Okay.
Obviously, this has become an emotional issue, and a bunch of neighbors have gotten together and become emotional. I don't think that emotion is going to subside by waiting 2 weeks. Mr. Tucker has apparently written a letter outlining exactly what they will and will not do. And yet, we still have this fever pitch. I think we should resolve this application today and let it go on to council. If they want to talk between now and council, fine. Maybe the protest won't follow the council. If they don't want to talk, I assume the same protest will be heard at council.
I agree with Commissioner Gales. 1 acre truly is not a problem. The limitations that you're dealing with this application limit it to a vineyard with whatever goes on with making, what can you do out of an acre of grapes? Maybe 12 bottles of wine a year?
It'll be more than a case, Bob, but it won't be.
Not very much more.
It's not going to be a living.
It's not, it's just, it doesn't rise to the level of alarming, as Commissioner Williams pointed out just a bit ago. If this was a hay field, and I'm going to cut hay, I'm going to sell hay, and I'm going to have trucks going back and forth, and I've got a hay barn, I can do that under AA. I think that this particular application is absolutely primo for you and your neighbors. Now, emotions aside, a little winery with a nice building and all the elements that he's put into here, I think it improves significantly everybody's life and property in that area. Truly do. And therefore, I move to approve the application.
It will be the nicest accessory building in the neighborhood, I can tell you that. Is there a second?
No. Second.
Thank you.
I actually would have
Yes.
been all in favor of taking 2 weeks, although I understand what you're saying. I would really strongly encourage you to meet with the applicant between now and City Council. My guess is that many of your concerns can be, and from having spoken to the applicant, I think would be addressed by the application if you were able to articulate them. If you're concerned about there being deliveries in the middle of the night, I'm guessing he would be willing to limit the hours of deliveries. If you're concerned about hours of operation, I'm guessing he would be willing to limit them. And I'm saying that because my guess is that the use that he intends to make of this property would not in any way rise to the level of your concern. You don't want the thing to operate past, 10 o'clock at night. I'm guessing he never dreamed it would, So I would really strongly encourage you to meet with the applicant between now and City Council.
Mr. Chairman, before we vote, could I ask Mr. Tucker just a question?
Sure.
Would that be out of order?
Go right ahead,
Mr. Tucker, on the exhibit showing your location of your new structure and your parking lot,
Yes, sir.
in your written SPUD, it talks about a front setback of 25 feet, rear and side of 15 feet. What is your actual, it appears to be you're setting your building back a lot further than that. Is this close to your location of your building, or how far you plan on setting it back from the street and from the property line?
The actual, according to the drawing,
Yes.
that's probably at least a good, probably 60 feet or more. So, and the reason we switched some things up on there was because of where the fire hydrant was. So we just wanted to make sure that we're within where the, I believe it's the 350 feet radius. So that's, kind of where we moved it back. And plus, we also moved it to where it would be out of the view of our neighbors to the south.
Could you is there some way we could pin that down?
Sure.
Where we wouldn't get any closer than that 25 and 15?
Well, what is the setback on your house from the street, roughly?
Could it not be further in front of it?
Yeah,
You set it back not in front of the house, or keep it on the same plane as
I
the
mean,
front of the house?
our setback is probably equal to or greater to Mrs. Gordon's setback. So it's probably
I went
a
and
good
looked, but I'm not-
It's a
65,
good
I think
150
That's what I think.
to 200 feet to the house.
Yeah.
Well, James, we can condition the location of the building that the front of the building to the street is behind the front of the
Just
primary structure.
All the same.
Correct,
On the same plane with,
that's where it's located.
on the same plane with, it don't have to be
as
behind.
long as it's no nearer the street than the front of the house.
Correct, that's no problem.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
You can come back. And would you be willing to limit it to by appointment only, as you've apparently represented to your neighbors?
Yes, I mean, that's,
Okay.
you know, both my wife and I work full-time jobs. You know, our intentions isn't to have a brothel or a liquor store out there, and you know, our home is located right next to it, so we're obviously not going to do anything that we think that would bring down the value of our own property, because we invested a lot of time and investment in it as well. So.
Well, like Commissioner Gales, I went out and looked at the whole area, so I'm familiar with it. Ms. Gordon, go ahead with your question.
Could the manufacturing and production be limited to the growth of grapes just on that property?
It is.
Suppose he wants to blend his wine. Yeah. I mean, do you have a problem? Can you agree to that?
There's actually several.
No.
Yeah, there's actually several vineyards here in the state that sell the same type grape as what I have. But, you know, it all comes down to it's not going to be a high-traffic facility, and it's all going to be located within that property, within inside that building. And
I wouldn't do that.
like I had tried to communicate to the neighbors, is that they would never know that there was actually a business there other than if we weren't here at this zoning meeting, so.
Okay. Yeah. So we're good to go with the application as it is?
I believe so.
With the one condition, a TE that the tastings are by appointment only.
Well, for appointment only,
And the
front
setback- and the setback of the
will
building.
be equal, even with the house.
Right, at least-
No closer to the road than
No
the
closer to the road than the front of the house.
front of the house.
And with those two amendments, I amend my motion to that extent.
Who seconded?
I did.
You did?
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve item 10 as conditioned. Cast your votes, and you're approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 11 is C-6279, which is a preliminary plat of T Property subdivision in Ward 8.
My name is Stephen Fox, Fox Engineering, 211 East Street, Ardmore, Oklahoma. I'm here to represent the applicant, T Properties. They're proposing a commercial subdivision consisting of 4 lots, bounded on the south by John Kilpatrick Turnpike, on the west by MacArthur, on the east by Martin Park Boulevard, and on the north by the Gillardia Development. Multiple.
Are you in agreement with the TEs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No one has signed up.
Move approval.
I'll move approval, yeah.
Well, we have that's 2, so
So it's double approved?
yeah.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 11. Cast your votes. And we don't have all those people here now. James is gone, so we need to take that. Okay, good. Thank you. You're approved. Thank you.
Item 12 is SPUD 612, an application by Accord OKC members to rezone 6446 North Peniel Avenue from R4 to SPUD 612, Ward 1.
Melissa Wheeler, 6303 Northwest 63rd Street, Oklahoma City, 73132. The commission saw me approximately 11 months ago, in which you passed, and it went to council. We have made some adjustments to the new application, and that is no mixed beverages. It is strictly beer and wine. We still agree to the limitations that it be served during dinner service only, Monday through Friday, 4 to 9. And on Saturday from 4 to 6, and inside the club room area only, without it going outside the walls to any adjacent areas.
And you're in agreement with all the TEs, which of course limit it to residents and their guests. Those are the conditions we put on the ABC, if you all will recall.
Right.
And I am, sir.
They agree to all of these, is my understanding on the front. Now,
And I could tell you, I stayed there for a month or so and used the facility, and I never saw a traffic issue. I mean, that was one of the things protesters brought up the last time around, and if I were to drive to the clubhouse, I never had a problem finding a parking space in the lot, so I never had to hunt for a spot on the street or anything. So
now it's non-retail, right?
Completely non-retail, only available for our guests and residents.
And so how's they pay you, you bill them, how does that work?
Basically, it is added, there's no cash. It's exchanged
that's what I
at the
wanted.
facility. It is billed to their room or their apartment.
Their room or their apartment account, so it's an internal billing, so do we need to add that, or I don't really? I just wanted to clarify that that's what it was. I don't think we need to add that. Okay. All right. I'll move approval. As conditioned with the TEs.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 12. Cast your votes, and you're approved.
Thank you, Commission.
Item 13 is C5678, which is an extension of the preliminary plat of Meadow Lake, located south of Wilshire and west of County Line in Ward 1.
Mr. Allen.
Good afternoon. My name is Charles Allen, Allen Engineering. Scott Woodward's here with Meadow Lake Development to answer any questions. We are currently working on Section 2 right now. Read the staff report. I don't think there are any technical evaluations. Just ask for approval of the preliminary plat.
No one signed up, but commissioners, and the TE takes care of current landscaping, current development standards.
Move approval.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 13. Cast your votes, and you're approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, I have a question.
Yeah.
On applications like this, is it appropriate for us to consider them in the light of whether we would approve the plat or preliminary plat or final plat if it were coming before us now? Because I'm not quite sure that I would have on this particular one. It has such limited access. And you know, I don't necessarily have a problem extending it, but I'm not sure that if it were being presented to us fresh, it's one that I would approve. And so my question is, and I'm not necessarily...
Good point, actually.
...directing this to legal. It's maybe more of a policy question, but, you know, in what way should we look at these kinds of applications, do we think?
That is a good question, because if the access standards are different today, I mean, we've been looking at things like, you know, landscaping and median improvements or whatever. Got any thoughts, Russell or JJ, either one of you?
Well, I think it's appropriate to look at all current conditions as you need to evaluate everything under those circumstances. And that might, I don't know, we can look at how we do that, but we might tie that to how we, I don't know what the language in the original approvals could contain something to that effect.
Well, if there was limited access, access would have been addressed 5 years ago, I'm sure. But Janice's question is, if the fire department or we now have a different standard for access, should that be addressed?
Not just in terms of that very technical
No, I know, but you're talking about a review with...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you look at this, if any one of us were looking at it fresh, I think there would certainly be issues or questions about, you know, connectivity or just the fact that there are this many lots emptying out through a single point of access onto Wilshire Boulevard and so on. And, you know, as I was looking at it, the questions that I had to myself were about, you know, if I were looking at this today, I'm not sure I would be approving it. So
Well, does it, though, if they come up with just an extension, that's what the request is, do we have the jurisdiction to say, thank you very much, but we want to look at the whole thing once again? Does that?
Well, we can deny the extension, I guess.
Yeah, you don't have to grant the extension. There's nothing that says that has to be granted. And the other thing is
And then they file a new application?
Yeah. And we're now already asking for them to come up to meet the current subdivision regulations and landscape standards, for example.
So I think Janice's point about ingress, egress, escape routes, et cetera, that might have been approved 5 years ago might be different today. I don't know.
Well,
but we can deny it, and then they come back in and file a whole new.
Well, I think we should go forward with the items for individual consideration.
Yeah.
So that, but it's something that if we want to take that up and as a study session, we can do that. Okay, Russell.
Item 14 is SPUD 614, application by J&P Holdings to rezone 8533 Northwest Expressway from C3 to SPUD 614, Ward 1.
I'm Michael Way, 13,000 North Sarah Road. I'm here representing, what are they called, J&P Holdings. Sorry, couldn't think of the name. Vera Mahan. Anyway, she's out of town, can't be here. Fairly simple thing. It's the church that currently owns that property, the pastor sitting right over here, is selling, has agreed to sell this property contingent upon zoning it, changing it to a SPUD that will allow a Camp Bow Wow, if you all are familiar with that.
Some of us apparently are. Commissioner Hensley.
Anyway, that's it. Any questions?
Well,
we have a Camp Bow Wow rep here.
Bowette.
Bowette, yes.
Yeah, you might tell us about Camp Bow Wow a little bit, about that it's not just our staff report, I believe on the front page says that a daycare for dogs. It is.
I'm going to let her.
But it's also a boarding facility. You might tell us what you do.
Yes, sir. I'd be more than happy to tell you what we do.
Tell us your name and address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Donna Wally, that's W-A-L-L-E, 1876 West Robinson Street, apartment D as in dog, here in Norman, Oklahoma.
Thank you.
And as I said, I'd be happy to tell you about Camp Bow Wow. Camp Bow Wow is a premier doggy daycare and overnight boarding facility. We are essentially not your traditional kennel. We do not have indoor-outdoor runs where your pet comes to us, we put them in a run, and that's kind of where they stay. What we have is individual cabins for our customers. We like to call them campers. So they have their individual cabins. Those cabins are actually where they stay for their meals and their overnight boarding. The play yards that we have are actually kind of set up like a dog park. And so we have separate play yards. We have anywhere from 4 to 5 play yards. Those play yards are divided up between the size and the energy level of the particular dog. At Camp Bow Wow, we do require an interview process. So any dog that comes to us will be temperament tested to ensure that they are safe around other dogs, that they're going to be safe around our counselors. Our counselors are actually certified camp counselors. They're required to learn dog CPR as well as first aid. They also have behavioral training. We utilize the methods that most people know about, the dog whisperer. We utilize his methods as well as Victoria Stillwell, so it's always a very positive environment. There's very limited barking, except, quite frankly, when the parents show up, because all the dogs are kind of running to the gates going, is it my mom, is it my dad, is it my time to go home? And we're all trained in a way to kind of divert them from that so that they stay quiet. The big thing is the overnight boarding. They are inside the facility, and so they're in their individual cabins. Our days are very, very structured, very much like a child care facility, in that when our employees come in, they come in about 6:30 in the morning. We're not open to the public until 7 o'clock in the morning. And so they come in, they let our overnight campers out so they can take care of their business because they've been up in their cabins all night. And then while they're kind of taking care of their business, we're getting their breakfasts ready. And so anywhere from just dry food to any kind of mixture, whatever the pet parent wants for their camper. We get them ready for their breakfast, approximately 7 o'clock in the morning. They go back up into their cabins to have their breakfast. Our daycare dogs start coming in about 7 o'clock. So we have our daycare dogs out in the play yards. Our ratio is 1 counselor per 15 dogs. Like I said, like you would have in a child care facility. You'd want to have enough counselors in order to provide that kind of one-on-one training that we do to ensure that we do have kind of a quiet community. Okay. Once they've had their breakfast, we make them wait about an hour and a half because we want everybody to digest properly before they go out and kind of play in the yard and take care of any business that breakfast may have caused them to need to do. They play for approximately 2 hours, once again chaperoned by our counselors. They go back up about 11 o'clock for their nap time. During that nap time, we use that to do a really thorough cleaning because what we do, obviously, if you have a whole community of dogs, you know what happens, and as it happens, we clean it up. We use eco-friendly products that are actually the same products that are used in child care facilities and in hospitals. So they not only take care of the smell, they take care of any of the kind of potential bacterial or viral type infections that our campers can spread back and forth to each other. We do, however, require that all our campers are spayed or neutered, and they're also current on all their vaccinations. And so that keeps any of that kind of thing down extremely well. During their nap time, we go out and we do a really, really thorough cleaning so that anything that may have potentially been missed is taken care of. The outside area where they are able to go to actually has anywhere from 3/8 to 1 inch deep of pea gravel, which actually lives up to its name because that's what it's used for. And we spray that out during that nap time as well, once again using approved eco-friendly products that actually are enzyme-based. So they take care of any of that kind of smell, any of that kind of waste product.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Too bad you don't take children.
They're four-legged children, sir.
Any protests?
No. No.
Second.
Well, let me just make a statement here. I can't wait for Cleo and Annabelle to go to Camp Bow Wow with all that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 14. Cast your votes, and you're approved. Thank you.
We're reversing the order of 15 and 16 to hear the zoning first. So item 16 is PUD 1440, which is an application by Shaz Investments to rezone 8049 Southwest 59th Street from PUD 1211 to PUD 1440, Ward 3.
Good afternoon again. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates representing the applicant on this. This is a piece of property that I've worked on for a number of years with another developer. It went back to the bank. The bank has sold it to the current developer. And what we're trying to do with this rezoning is to make this property more compatible with the zoning that was approved on the west side of the creek. And really the only change to the zoning would be allowing the individual home lots to be a little smaller than what is under R1. This tract was originally approved as R2 duplex zoning, and there still will be a few duplexes. If you probably don't recall, but your staff report spells out the fact that the plat had been submitted and approved by you all. The utilities were built. Everything but the street was constructed. So what we're trying to do is to fit all the existing utility services that are already in there, but they want to go with the single-family detached for the bulk of this plat. So with regard to the zoning, we met with the staff, and we are in agreement with all the TEs that they've asked for, and we would request your approval.
Buck, any comments?
No, I mean, other than the density. No, I'm not a big fan of the density levels, but this is plat of land that's been worked on for several years, and I know they've installed utilities and all sorts of, a lot of work has been done out there, so I'm not sure what, we could go back and revisit that at this point, but I don't have any other issues with it.
Okay, anyone else? No one signed up?
I'll move for approval.
Okay. Okay, motion and second to approve item 16. Cast your votes, and it's approved. Kendall, why don't you wander up while we're doing the next one?
So item 15 is C6274, which is the final plat of Clearwater, Section 1.
As mentioned, this is a plat that you all have seen before in a duplex state, and again, we've met with the staff and are in agreement with all the TEs.
Commissioners? Again, no one has signed up.
I'll move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 15. Cast your votes, and that's approved. Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
Item 17 is C-6281, the revised final plat of Castlebrook Crossing, second edition, Ward 3.
Good afternoon. Kendall Dillon with Craft and Toll, representing the applicant, and this is a final plat that matches preliminary plat. We're in agreement with all the staff's TEs and would ask for your approval.
Kendall, can we save any of the trees along the eastern line? Well, first of all, what kind of trees are there? I mean, I'm looking at an aerial, and what are...
I think there's a lot of blackjack trees and some other trees. There are a few trees that are somewhat mature and fairly decent. I would like to tell you that we can save most all of them, but unfortunately, probably most of them we're going to have to take out. If you look at this site overall, and this is a site that I've just now become involved with this particular section, but in order to make the whole site work, specifically in regards to sanitary sewer, we're going to have to do quite a bit of, we're going to have to generate a lot of dirt in what was Section 1 and in this section to make the whole thing work. So I don't think we'll be able to save a lot of trees. But we'll try to save the ones that we can. Obviously, it helps market our lots.
Yeah, save as many as you can.
Sure.
No one has signed up, Commissioners. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 17. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 18 is SPUD 613, an application by GRJ to rezone 1400 Northwest 3rd Street from R3 SP 243 to SPUD 613, Ward 6.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Dennis Fox. I'm here with James Murray. He's General Counsel and Vice President with LSB Industries. They have a number of different companies. They own property in the surrounding area. In fact, they bought the old Robertson Steel plant. They have improved it, and the vacant building, as you see, they plan on building and improving it in the future. This site, I have a number of pictures if you all want to see it. I know it's late, but the area in question, and if you all are wondering why we put in there the special permit uses, those were approved by a previous Planning Commission and Council a number of years ago. And so we have a contract to purchase this property, and the owner requested that we leave those in until we closed on the property. And I recognize that from a zoning standpoint, you can't make that conditional, but we'd like, as part of the TEE, we don't have any problem in taking them out. We'd just like the opportunity to take them out at the council level because we think we will probably have made a decision on closing by then. We have to complete our due diligence, but it looks, we've done a lot of work and it looks like things are in good order. This site, we plan on taking the old Willard School, and it will be remodeled for offices. We will have surface parking for the interim, but in the future we could have a wide variety of uses, including some industrial, some commercial. If you've had the opportunity to drive by this site, you'll note that it's definitely in the transition stage, and so I think the technical evaluations deal with that, and we can agree to them except for I'd like one consideration. When we deal with signage, what I'd requested, and after talking to Mr. Bright, he made it very clear that the I-2 sign regulations were not going to be appropriate on this site, and on this case I agreed with him. Hate to admit that publicly, but I did. And so what we'd like to do, the staff has indicated that we can only have ground signs with a maximum size height of 8 feet. We don't know what the future will hold, whether we end up building another warehouse on the site, another office building, or some other use. And what we'd like to do, we can agree to the ground signs, but we'd like the option that if we came back in the future and had one of our companies, and they've got a number of different companies that they operate, if we had one of our companies that wanted a sign that was 15 feet tall and had a maximum square footage of 200 feet, we would have the opportunity to come back to you all and have you all either approve or deny a site plan for that size sign. In other words, permitted would be what you have in your technical evaluation, the ground sign, with the option that if one of our companies wanted to put a 15-foot tall sign with the 150 square feet, we would come back to you, and that would be the parameters that you all would look at.
Do you need that kind of a stipulation, because otherwise you would have to file a whole new...
Zoning case.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you couldn't go to the board, because it'd be a change of use, and so
Right.
we'd have to...
But it would be, Dennis, a monument sign, and reflect upon the signs that were approved with your Chesapeake application, where the architect had really very unusual, different signs that were 15 feet tall. I mean, there's signs and then there's signs, and so I have no objection whatsoever to that.
Okay.
I think that would be just fine. But the two uses that you want to get out of there, just make sure that when you close, I mean, you leave them open until you close on the transaction, but whatever we have to put in here to make sure that those are not permitted once you're the owner.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure, Dennis, that you are talking specifically about forced detention and mental health facilities.
Yeah, those two. Right.
We could reword TE1 to say that upon closing by this purchaser or something like that.
I think we'd have to do it at the council, because once it gets past council, I think you probably lose jurisdiction to modify a zoning ordinance. So at the time of council review, then we would have to make that change.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to do a closing, but I don't think legally that passes.
So if we modify that to say the forced detention and mental health facility uses and regulations should be eliminated at
the time the city council votes on it.
The time of city council review?
Yes, sir.
I have one other question about the automotive parking garages. You're limiting that to 4 stories. What's allowed under that particular use? How many stories can you go up?
Well, you could go up multiple stories depending on what kind of setbacks you had. We came up with 4 based on meetings with staff where they wanted us to limit to 4. So I couldn't tell you the exact number, but in industrial, you could, I'm guessing, probably go up maybe 5 or 6.
I really don't know. Is it 6? Okay. All right. With those modifications, are there any protesters?
No.
I move approval of the application with the Ts as they are, but with the modification that Commissioner Yokel has penciled in regarding the 2 uses that will be deleted when you can, if you close, and the statement that at such time as you want to come back with a site plan with a 15-foot monument sign, we agree to that.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second, including modifying T number 1 as I read it and adding a T number 5 with respect to the 15-foot sign.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Cast your votes. And you're approved.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank the staff. As you all know, you got a modified staff report, and we have a contract that is running, and they were very nice to work with us, and as they always are, but they went the extra mile on this one. We want to say thank you.
Item 19 has been continued until next meeting on 26th. Item 20 are amendments to the preservation guidelines and standards, and Catherine is here to read some changes to that ordinance.
Good afternoon. As was...
Catherine, for the record, give us just your name.
Catherine Montgomery.
Thank you.
Planning staff. There was one change that was brought to our attention that needed to be made, and I'd like to read that into the record. On the guidelines document that you have there, the pages are not actually numbered, so this is the third page. And it begins at the second paragraph. Currently, it reads, some interior and exterior, etc. And we'd like to change that to say, some exterior, etc. So in other words, we're striking the words interior and.
Thank you. I did spot that again.
And any other questions that you might have?
Commissioners, we went over this in our last workshop. Janice?
Here's on page, this is kind of awkward since they're not numbered, isn't it? If that was the third, then this would be the fourth. About halfway down, in the second group of underlined text, the last of those three, it says, the new design of a missing feature shall take into account the size, scale, and materials of the historic building and should be clearly differentiated to avoid a false historical appearance. Now, every time I read that, are you telling me that we want it to not look like it belongs there? We want it to not look like it was part of the original structure?
You distinguish the old from the new, and that's part of the Secretary of Interior's guidelines on
That is what it
preservation.
means?
That's exact. Yeah.
Actually, yes. There are two things that should occur, and one should read the bulleted item just above that, which says an appropriate option for a replacement feature is a new design that is compatible with the remaining character-defining features in a historic building. So the idea is that new designs are compatible and differentiated. So it doesn't... What it means is that if you have a feature that's missing or you're proposing a new feature, it should be compatible yet differentiated, compatible in that it blends, and differentiated in such a way that it doesn't command more attention than the historic portions, but that it is not, doesn't convey the exact same appearance to make somebody believe that it had always been there.
So the effect of reading them together, Janice, is the definition of subjective. I mean, I make light of it, but it's
no faux finish.
It's a complicated set of standards to apply. Difficult. Right, Catherine?
It is a challenge.
I would think so.
Okay.
But it does comply with the Secretary of Interior standards.
The other question I had, when we discussed this at our, what do we call those things, study sessions, we had a long discussion about the contact with the historic preservation neighborhoods, and I really came away from that session thinking that we were going to have some public meetings or meetings with the HP neighborhoods to, sit down and talk about these changes and, have discussion and go through them and have some level of comfort that they were not just made aware, but really aware of them, and that we had some input from them, even if we had to more or less wring it out of them. And while I appreciate what's set forth here in the background, which is a quite lengthy recitation of what was sent out to them, I don't see, well, I guess it does say that only Edgemere chose to give feedback. And I have a real concern about adopting these standards in the absence of, or these changes, in the absence of feedback, even if we have to wring it out of them. So I'll just say that. Not faulting anybody here, I'm just saying, I think we need some feedback before we change the HP guidelines.
Well, we did go and we did not have public meetings, but we went to them again, and again, I stress that, these were minor changes, they were all positive changes, and we have limited resources to be able to do that, and, when we do hold those meetings, we find it very difficult to get people to come. So I think we've done the ringing.
We did go back out after the planning workshop and requested that all of the neighborhoods, our contacts with those neighborhoods, disseminate the information in the fashion that they felt most comfortable, but at least at a minimum that they all acknowledged that they received them, and they were all emailed again with the whole package, that they at least acknowledged that they received them and they didn't have comments, or they gave us comments. And so once again, out of the 9 zoned districts, we got emails back from 4 of them. Heritage Hills, whose comments largely had to do with, well, only had to do with the concrete issue. Edgemere Park had no comments. Crown Heights had no comments. And Mesta Park had 2 people who commented, one who had no comments, and the second who had extensive comments that actually go into areas that are much larger than what we're addressing here. So I did contact, those extensive comments came through the chair of the Preservation Review Committee for Mesta Park. So I did thank them for their comments and got back to them yesterday and said that I had gone through all of the comments and at first had attempted to type out a reply to each and every one, but feeling that that was an ineffectual way to really engage in some dialogue, suggested instead that we meet in whatever fashion Mesta Park desires, whether that's a one-on-one with the person that made the comments or whether that's with meeting with just the smaller group, the Preservation Review Committee, or whether that was a full neighborhood meeting. And the response that I got back from the chair of the Preservation Review Committee was that she would pass that on to the person who made the comments, and that she had passed my email on to him, and then she gave me his cell phone number so that I can call him and have a one-on-one discussion or whatever they desire. Beyond that, we are getting ready to gear up for neighborhood-by-neighborhood meetings to open discussion on the green guidelines, which are currently being drafted. I anticipate that a lot of the things that are in these cleanup items that we have here, I kind of consider them cleanup items, that those discussions will be much bigger, and that's only a few months away. These changes that you see here, we've been working on these for about 1.5 years. And the green guidelines are due to be unveiled, if you will, in August. So between now and August, the goal is to have some neighborhood meetings and then continue with those neighborhood meetings after the new guidelines are out there for comment, and then go through the typical approval process.
Catherine, thank you for taking the extra steps and at least making sure that everybody has it in hand. And
we're trying.
I know. I appreciate it since I'm the one who raised it to begin with. I appreciate all the follow-through.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comment, or shall we approve these amendments?
Move to approve.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve item 20. Cast your votes. And it's approved. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
And item 21 are ordinance amendments to Chapter 59 that we discussed in the study session. Susan's here to answer any questions on that.
Commissioners? Need a motion to approve and declare an emergency? Motion and second. Cast your votes. Please declare emergencies in there. It's in there. Everybody out of the building. I know. I have it right in front of me. I guess we take a motion to continue item 9 for another 2 weeks. The applicant is not here.
Move to continue item number 9.
Okay, motion and second to continue item 9. Cast your votes. Thank you. It's continued for 2 weeks. Planning Commission committees. Planning Commission members.
I have to tell you, those who did not attend the Mayor's Roundtable, Development Roundtable, and for those of you who snuck out early, that I learned more in the 5 minutes that the mayor gave his lead up to the Chesapeake Award about Chesapeake and their plans for the future and what their development plan is for their property and what it's really going to look like eventually and how big it's going to be than I've learned in all the 6 years that I've been sitting in this seat. So it was worth going for that alone.
Okay, anything else, commissioners? Planning Department?
Be happy to take any feedback on the workshop. Talk to a couple of you. Also, I will be gone for the month of May as well. I mean, June. I'll be in Australia.
It is May now.
Yeah, I know. Maybe I'm partially gone. I will be gone during June. I'm not sure. I'm going to have one meeting. Are we on one meeting in June?
Have two.
Two.
So who's in your chair?
JJ, I guess. I'd be happy to sit up here, right? That's the point, yeah. I'm not asking, it doesn't necessarily need to be in this forum. No, I'm just saying, I haven't talked to all of you, so, we don't have these very often, so any input back would be gratefully received.
I actually would like to say, I guess, that it was an improvement over the last one we had in the sense that there actually was an exchange of ideas and opinions rather than, mere presentation of material. People, voiced their opinions and had something to say, and I think that was a step in the right direction. So,
I would agree. A couple of the council people suggested that they'd like to do it more often, suggesting once or twice a year possibly. Whether you can get them all rounded up or not is a different question, but that was at least the opinion of two.
That's all I have.
Okay. JJ, anything? Susan?
Move to adjourn.
We're adjourned. Thank you all.